Hey, good evening, everyone. Sorry for making you wait. All right, I hereby call this meeting of council committees to order. A couple of things real quick. Let me catch my breath. First and foremost, you are being recorded, just a heads up. So when you make comments, they are being broadcast as the meeting is being live streamed. Please take this opportunity to silence or turn off or put your cell phones on vibrate. And please endeavor to keep your comments to 3 minutes in length and begin with your name and the block of your residence. Mr. Harris, the roll call of members, please.
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Arroyo.
Here.
Ms. Bakay.
Here.
Mr. Calixte.
Here.
Ms. Craig.
Here.
Ms. Diaz.
Here.
Ms. Walsh.
Here.
And President Smith-Waddell.
Here, finally. Excellent, that'll do us. We go then to the approval of the, I believe they are August 1st, 2022 committee meeting minutes.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Council comments on the minutes. Okay, hearing none. Mr. Harris.
Mr. Arroyo.
Aye.
Ms. Bakay.
Aye.
Mr. Calixte.
Aye.
Ms. Craig.
Aye.
Ms. Diaz.
Aye.
Ms. Walsh.
Aye.
And President Smith-Waddell.
Aye. Thank you. All, with your forbearance, I would like to take the committee of the whole items at the top of the meeting rather than at the end, just to acknowledge those folks that are here for a resolution. We should be able to deal with that pretty quickly. Is that okay with everybody?
Yeah.
Okay, great, fantastic. I will hereby open the committee of the whole, which is all of us. And we begin with, actually, Mr. Harris, if you would like.
First, we have Council Resolution 73, recognizing Welcoming Week.
All right, I'll hear a motion.
Just a committee meeting, just discussion this evening.
Oh, we don't,
Oh, I'm sorry. Would you like to do a,
do we need to move it out of committee?
yeah, to move it out of committee? I'm sorry.
No, we're good.
Motion to move this to full council on Tuesday, September 13th.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. So who do we have to talk to us about Welcoming Week? Oh. Hey, Millsy.
There we go. Is that better?
Much
Okay,
better.
great. The City of Lancaster is designated welcoming. It's a very rigorous certification, and we just finished our audit, our internal audit and assessment with the Welcoming City team. They were here for the last week. It's a special moment for our city. We are we're actually one of 3 cities, the first city in Pennsylvania to become welcoming certified. And we are now one of 14 cities in the United States of America that's certified as a welcoming city. As the designation essentially means that we are welcoming to immigrant and refugee populations. Our policies reflect the work. Our organization also support a strategic, larger plan for this city. So thank you for the opportunity and look forward to sharing more with you at the next council meeting. Thanks.
Thank you. Any council comments on the item? Okay. Hearing, from the public? Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Arroyo.
Aye.
Ms. Bakay.
Aye.
Mr. Calixte.
Aye.
Ms. Craig.
Aye.
Ms. Diaz.
Aye.
Ms. Walsh.
Aye.
And President Smith-Waddell.
Aye. Thank you all very much. That brings us to council resolution number 74. I can just do these instead of holding you up, Mr. Harris, which would be recognizing Hispanic Heritage Month. So I'll hear a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Councilor Arroyo or Councilor Diaz, I don't know why I looked up like you were going to appear there. But would either of you like to talk briefly about this?
Yeah.
Please.
I'd be happy to, Council President. This resolution acknowledges the contributions from the Hispanic community to the Lancaster County community. We could talk more about it when we pass it off into full council, but if possible, I'd actually like either Director Carrasco or Mayor Sirachi to discuss some of the events that are coming up. The City Hall is planning for upcoming events. That'd be great. Yeah.
Yes, so thank you, Councilman. We have several events that are planned. The city's actually organizing an event on October 15th, celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month here at Binns Park. Community partner, the Chamber is also organizing a Spanish business owner breakfast at the end of October that we're really excited about. We also have a program that's out in social media, and everyone here, if you're we're encouraging everyone to nominate someone that's contributed to the community here in the city of Lancaster to the building the community for the Hispanic leaders. Last year we started, it's called the Lifetime Achievement Award for a Hispanic leader. And we're looking for nominations this year as well. And I think, Mayor, I think those are all the events that we have planned for this year. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Carrasco. That's all, Council President.
Thank you. Any other comments from council? Any other comments from the public? Okay. Yeah, I'll just do these by acclamation. In that case, all in favor?
Aye.
Excellent. Sorry for the confusion there, folks. We'll go then to Council Resolution number 76, recognizing Hazel I. Jackson Day of Action. This is one I'm particularly excited about, but first I will hear a motion.
Motion to move to full council?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. You'll certainly hear more about this next week. But the family and friends of SDOL teacher and Millersville professor Hazel I. Jackson maintain a foundation in her honor, and every year in October they honor her legacy by encouraging the community to engage in acts of public service. And so we wanted to take the opportunity to recognize this with a council resolution, and you'll hear more about that, particularly from her daughter and longtime city treasurer and Crispus Attucks Community Center Director, Cheryl Holland-Jones. That's kind of what I've got on the matter. Any other council comments?
Just to add, Council President, that the
Please.
city continues to be a partner. There's a lot of neighborhood cleanups, and so we continue to provide support for initiatives where we can as it relates to this Day of Action. We appreciate the organizing and effort to honor Ms. Jackson and her legacy here in our community.
Thank you, Mayor. From the public? Okay, hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And that moves us to an ordinance process review. That feels like it has
It's very.
1 point. Mr. Harris?
It's very.
Mr.
That is
President,
Mr.
that would be the,
Handberger.
Oh,
Yes.
Mr. Barry Hanna.
sorry, I didn't see you back there, sir.
No worries. Good evening, councilors. So I've put up on the screen for you, and your computer's a little PowerPoint. As you're aware, in the mayor's strategic plan, the city's strategic plan, sound governance is one of the core principles of how we operate and what we want to do. And the solicitor's office, one of the things that we are looking at is how to assure that ordinances are not only adopted, but are reviewed in an equitable manner so as to avoid inequities and bias. And what I'm here to present to you tonight is what we've come up with, and then how we're going to test it before we come back to you with a formal process that we'd ask you to adopt and incorporate as you move forward as legislators with ordinances in the city of Lancaster. So, Mr. Harris, first couple questions. I'm going to read a little bit and then I'll be talking most, but, how do we avoid institutional inequity and discrimination in the process? We have to establish a process to analyze existing and proposed legislation to avoid bias and assure equity. To do so, we have to recognize that not every individual group or classification of people is or will be impacted by city legislation in the same manner. That being said, we need to define What is equity? What does it mean? We're using it in this context. The term equitable acknowledges the existence of imbalances, that the city's process recognizes that those imbalances occur and makes adjustments to prevent their continuance. Ordinance development and analysis needs to be a perpetual, continuing process. If you adopt an ordinance today and we believe it to be equitable, unbiased, its impact may ultimately prove to have bias or inequitable results. If we're not monitoring it, if we're not checking it, if we're not testing it, we're allowing the inequity to continue. And that's the process we want to get in the habit of doing here. We always assume good intentions when we adopt the legislation, but we have to develop processes that assure that those intentions are met not only during the adoption process, but in an annual, biannual, or some form of periodic review process that's governed by data. So, to assure equity in the adoption and review of city legislation, the city must be curious about the impacts of and the need for the legislation on the most disenfranchised and least represented members of its community. The city must ensure that legislation provides its residents with equal access to the resources, programs, city staff, and other tools that the legislation may create or impact. To that end, we've developed a 6-step process. 1, identify the goal. What are we trying to address? And determine if existing or other ordinances already provide tools to solve the problem. Duplicative legislation creates even more inequity and more bias than actually using the legislation that already exists, because it creates additional tools or weapons for that inequity. If we have something in place that works, or should work, but isn't for some reason, that's where we need to be looking first, rather than putting more words on a piece of paper. 2, examine the legislation carefully to determine how different populations will be impacted. I think this statement speaks for itself. We've all been through the last couple of years. We've all been through talking and hearing and listening about inequity and equity, and what do those mean? The reality is we have to start from a listening point of not everybody starts from the same place, and different people are going to react differently and be impacted differently by the same piece of legislation. We have to understand that, acknowledge it, and plan for it. 3, collect relevant data that is reliable, tested, measurable, and equitable. What do we mean by collecting relevant data? We need to know how our ordinances are being enforced. We need to know how we're going to enforce them. We need to have data to support both. How are we going to do it, and how are we going to track it? What are the results? What was the goal of the legislation to begin with? Is that goal being met by the data of enforcement? Ultimately, it's more than just a behavior. It's what are we trying to deal with? 4, project the results of the ordinance. When we're drafting new legislation, we want to project. We want to anticipate what the results will be by the drafting of that legislation and by the adoption of it. And again, we want to utilize accurate assumptions. We need to question and test all of those assumptions. 5, provide adequate citizen participation in the creation or review of the legislation. That doesn't just necessarily mean showing up at City Council and saying to members of the community, you can come here and talk. We need to be far more engaged in that in the process. Finally, develop and implement a matrix for tracking the results of implementation and enforcement of the ordinance. In other words, we need to be tracking it, we need to have a method to track it, and a method to report it after it's been adopted, so that we can constantly be testing it for those same biases and principles we looked at to begin with. So rather than coming to you tonight with an ordinance that says this is how we want to do it, we want to try it. We want to try it on a topic that's been before City Council and been before the City Administration for a little while now. And it's not going to be an easy one to tackle. So we're going to try a hard one first, our noise ordinance. So, Mr. Harris. We all know we have an existing noise ordinance. So we're starting this with utilizing this process for the review of our existing ordinance. Step 1, as it says here, preliminary research. What's that mean? Why is the ordinance being proposed or being reviewed? And what does it intend to achieve? Again, we've been receiving various types of complaints. We've had complaints about cars and motorcycle noise. We've had complaints about amplified sound. We've had complaints about sound in our parks during events. We've had all sorts of complaints. The volume of those we don't really know yet. We need to determine that. So we started that. We've started the process of pulling the data that we have currently. Noise complaints. Who's issued them? What quadrant of the city? What are the types of noise being complained of? What time of day? What time of the evening? To try and get a better sense of what complaints as an administration we're receiving. We've also started looking at other cities and what they do and what they've legislated and how they're enforcing issues with respect to noise as it's an issue in every one of the cities in Pennsylvania. When you live in a city, you have noise, and most all of them have a noise ordinance of some kind. We're seeing different approaches in many different places, and all of these will be factored in and weighed. We're seeing things such as quiet zones, increased penalties, different enforcement protocols, different uses of technology, different noticing of events, and complaint procedures. We're analyzing our current ordinance, its enforcement, and our processes in light of all of those things that we're seeing elsewhere as well. Preliminarily, we've learned that noise is not a one-size-fits-all problem. It comes in different places from different people. Residents, we have residential areas, landlord-tenant issues, entertainment, venues, restaurants, special events, vehicular noise, construction, zoning and building codes. How do we enforce it? These are all the issues that have been arising here in the city, and we are going to explore them comprehensively with the understanding that there may not be a perfect solution. But let's look at one that works for our city the best way it can. Mr. Harris. As I indicated earlier, cities have taken several different approaches in looking at this problem. They've defined noise differently. They've created a complaint process. Some have had health and safety officer enforcement. They've modified code requirements. They've cooperated with, they've elicited cooperation from entities such as venues, entertainment venues, restaurants that create noise by their very nature. Again, these are all things that we're looking at in different bits and pieces that other places have done and trying to figure out how they fit into the puzzle that is Lancaster. That covers the first two steps of the process that I laid out to you earlier. Steps 3 to 5 is where we're really going to dig in. So is the data obtained relevant, accurate, and substantive? We're looking at our existing sources, social media, Engage Lancaster, Police Bureau historical complaints, location mapping for where noise issues have arisen, complaints to the mayor's office, complaints to city council. We're looking at new sources to determine what level of noise and how noise is an issue and how it impacts our residents' and businesses' lives. Department of Neighborhood Engagement is working to put together a comprehensive neighborhood survey for us to question all segments of the population in all areas, what their issues are, if any, with noise. Because again, we're not going to assume that everywhere has a noise problem, but we are going to ask the questions. We're going to seek resident and business owner input. We're going to seek diverse and varying perspectives, and we're going to question and challenge any assumptions that come from the answers we're given to those questions. That covers essentially steps 3 through 5, where we collect data, make projections, and engage the community. Mr. Harris? Once we get through those 5 steps, then we're in a position to determine whether we need to amend the ordinance, change our procedures with respect to enforcement of the ordinance, adopt a new ordinance, or some combination of the above. It's at that point that we'll also begin developing a matrix for how we're going to track whatever we've decided to do, its enforcement, and its effectiveness. We're going to determine what kind of data or complaints will be collected. We're going to determine how to monitor its enforcement, how the reports will be analyzed and reported. Obviously, we're going to have council and citizen review prior to and after adoption. And we're going to look at how we can be transparent to the public about the use of the ordinance. One example is the city of San Antonio, where they have been, through a task force, publicizing on their website. They have an entire page dedicated to their noise task force, and they've been tracking and publicizing on a monthly basis their noise complaints, where they're at, and various data. It's just an example of what can be done. Again, that may or may not be something we incorporate, but the point is, how do we make this something that's not just city council or the city administration, but a cooperative process between the residents of the city of Lancaster and the legislature, city council, and the administration. This is the first step of designing a process for creating legislation that we believe will be equitable, biased, and stand the test of time as long as we follow it faithfully. I hope this test works, and I hope to be back to you sometime in the first part of next year with not only the results of this test, i.e. something different on the noise ordinance, but also a proposed process for you folks, City Council, to proceed with legislation. And I'm happy to take any questions or comments or hear anything that you'd like to see me add to this process as I'm here tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Handwerger. Council members, any questions for our solicitor? Any burning questions from the public on the matter? Okay,
Very good.
thank you very much, Mr. Handwerger.
Thank you. Good evening, all.
I want to take a second to recognize Ms. Cheryl Holland Jones. We did move the resolution for Hazel I. Jackson Day of Action to the full agenda to be voted on next Tuesday. But if you'd like a couple minutes to address council, I'd offer it to you at this time.
Good evening. Thank you for giving me the opportunity just to speak briefly about Jackson Day of Action, which is a civic duty project that we'll be having on October the 1st at Jackson Middle School. And we're real excited about this project because the project has grown so by participants with the United Way, with Thaddeus Stevens College, and just so many others in terms of a watershed project that we're going to work on that is there to the right of Jackson Middle School if you're looking straight onto it. And so it'll be about trying to take care of the greenery that's there that needs to be cultivated. There'll also be, Stevens College will be building raised beds for a garden piece for vegetables. We'll also be working on a beautification in the front of the school. So all things will be pretty much done outside. So we're praying for no rain. But anyway, we're real excited about that. And we think that it actually fits into some of the city's things that you are actually working on regarding your watershed projects. So we just found that out as well. So that it's something that can just flow into what's actually already happening here. So I thank you for the resolution.
Thank you very much, and thank you for sharing your mother with us in this way.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, unless there's anything else burning, I'm going to draw the committee of the whole to a close, and we'll go back to the top of our agenda as published, beginning with the Personnel Committee. Councilor Kalixt.
Thank you, Council President. The Personnel Committee has on its agenda for tonight the nomination, 6 items. And the first item is the nomination of 5 people, for reappointment to the Board of Plumbing Examiners. And the second item is the nomination of Amos Stoltzfus. I don't know if I say it right.
Got it.
For appointment to the Planning Commission as an alternate member. And the third item is the nomination of David Boehm And the fourth item is the nomination of Heidi Shirk. Both nominees are for appointment to the Planning Commission. And the fifth item is the nomination of Stephen Hackett for reappointment to the Planning Commission. And the sixth item, or the last item that we have on the agenda of the Personnel Committee, is Kelsey Gone Irvine's nomination for appointment to the Planning Commission as an alternate member. That's what we have in our agenda for the Personnel Committee tonight.
Please proceed.
Right, thank you. So let's start with the first nomination of the following five people for reappointment to the Board of Plumbing Examiners. The nominees are Steve Schwenger, Chad Walton, Daniel Moser, Barry Soder, and Sean Way. Are there any of those nominees here with us tonight? Okay, so I would make a motion to move these nominations to the full council meeting next Tuesday, September 13.
Second.
Thank you. All in favors?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. So let's go to the next item, which is number 2, the nomination of Amos Stoltzfus for appointment to the Planning Commission as an alternate member. Is Mr. Stoltzfus with us tonight? Would you like to come forward and address council? Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for being here tonight with us. Would you please share your vision of the board during your term with us?
Yeah, good evening. My name's Amos Stoltzfus. I live at the 100 block of South Ann Street. I first moved to Lancaster. I grew up in Lancaster County, in case that's not obvious by my name. First moved to Lancaster downtown and lived next to the Chameleon Club in the mid-2000s. And for me, as a kid out of college, Lancaster was the first place that I experienced people who had much different life experience than me and who looked different than me and had different belief systems. I fell in love with the city. Inspired me to study community and regional planning at the University of New Mexico. And so I'm really interested in joining Planning Commission because I love the city and also because I have a degree in urban planning and I want to use that to make the city an even more welcoming place for folks. I also have spent the last 10 years helping local governments engage with residents using technology, and now in my role as the SOE director, I spend a lot of time thinking about how can we make stronger connections between local government and residents. So I would also just interested in how we can make stronger connections between the Planning Commission and the folks that we serve. Thank you.
Thank you for your willingness to help, to serve. Are there any questions or comments from other members of the committee?
Councilor Caliste. Mr. Stoltzfus, thank you so much for being here this evening. And I'd like to take these opportunities to mention that while having experience in the particular area of the board or committee or authority that you're looking to serve on isn't a prerequisite, so we want to take volunteers from the community who have any type of experience. I appreciate you bringing your experience into this role, and particularly that perspective that you have as a county resident and now a city resident, and that passion that you have for planning. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments from the other members of the committee? Any questions or comments from council? From the public? Thank you. So motion to move this nomination to our full council meeting next Tuesday on September 13.
Second.
All in favors?
Aye.
Okay. That brings us to the third item, which is the nomination of David Boham for appointment to the Planning Commission. Bim.
I think.
I'm sorry. I apologize. I
No.
mispronounced your name.
It doesn't look like it's pronounced at all, so I totally understand. Yeah, my name is David Bain. I'm currently an alternate planning member, so I'm just moving over to full-time. I have city planning experience. I have a urban planning degree from University of Milwaukee, and really enjoyed the experience so far on the planning commission, and just looking forward to continue serving.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the other member of the committees, of the committee? Any comments?
Just a thank you, Mr. Boehm, for continuing to serve and spending time as an alternate member. I think will serve you well as a full regular member of the commission.
I agree. Thank you.
Any questions from council? From the public? Thank you, Mr. Beam. Okay, that brings us to the fourth item, which is the nomination. Oh. Yes, motion to move this nomination to our full council meeting this Tuesday.
Second.
All in favors?
Aye.
Okay, that brings us to the nomination of Heidi Shirk for appointment to the Planning Commission. Good evening.
Good evening. I'll just give a little information about myself. I have lived in downtown Lancaster for about 18 years, working as a caseworker at Department of Human Services for about 17 years. I love this community. I hope to see it continue to grow in a sustainable way. I have very limited experience, not as much as these two gentlemen, but I do have, I've worked as a realtor for 6 years in the county. I have some experience looking over architectural drawings and things like that as from childhood because of my father's career. And then I also recently have experienced my own interactions with zoning and land development and things like that in a project that I'm working on. So that kind of introduced me to this whole kind of side of planning in the city. And so I'm looking forward to just getting more involved in planning and see where that leads us. So, thank you.
All right, yeah, are there any questions from the other members of the committee? From council? From the public? Thank you for your interest to serve. Thank you. Motion to move this nomination to our next council meeting.
Second.
All in favors?
Aye.
Okay, the fifth item on the agenda for the Personnel Committee is Stephen Harkins' nomination for reappointment to the Planning Commission. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Council. Nice to be here. I've been on the Planning Commission for just under 2 years now. I've been in the City of Lancaster resident for about 9 years. Came from Delaware County, and when I moved here, I just absolutely fell in love. I've had the benefit of being here for just some amazing things that have happened here. And so over the last 2 years as a Planning Commission member, I've learned even more about what the community desires. I have a background in landscape architecture and urban planning and work for private development as well in my day job. And so have just a desire to bring that to the table as I continue to serve, hopefully, as a Planning Commission member.
All right, would you please share some of your goals during your term?
Some of my goals, I'd like to work to engage with some of the community organizations a little bit better and get a better understanding for how some of the neighborhood organizations feel they could be benefited by my role as a Planning Commission member and getting their voices heard through the development process. I live in the Northwest, but I know that I've been connected with some of the people in the Southeast most recently, and always look to bring that through as a member of the Planning Commission.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from the other member of the committee?
Councilor Caliste. Not a question so much, Mr. Hackett, but I want to say thank you for coming forward to be reappointed. It's always valuable to have folks on boards, commissions, and authorities that have gone through a term because it can take a little bit of time to get your feet wet, so to speak. So thank you for coming back to be reappointed.
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Motion to move this nomination to our next council meeting next Tuesday on September 13.
Second.
All in favors?
Aye.
Okay, the last item on our agenda for tonight, it's the nomination of Kelsey Gon Irvine for appointment to the Planning Commission as an alternate member. Will you please? Good evening. Thank you for being here tonight with us.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kelsey Goen Irvin. I grew up in Lancaster County and relatively recently moved back to the community. It truly is a really special place, and I've been looking for opportunities to get more involved. For my day job, I work with local governments across the United States, so I have a lot of appreciation for the processes that go on to really make decisions in an intentional and critical way, and I'm hoping to apply those skills to the planning process. I think that some of the things that would be important to me would be engaging with the community around planning decisions and then also thinking about it from a sustainable development perspective. How can we make decisions now that help set us up better for the future?
What motivates you to serve the community in this position?
I think that there's, I think here we've got a lot of folks who are really excited about serving the community, but I don't know that that's always necessarily true for young people. And I think that I just have a calling to help make the community that I live in a better place. And I don't know as much about planning as maybe some of the other folks on the committee, but I do have a commitment to learn about it and then ask really curious questions that hopefully will move the Planning Commission along to make good decisions.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from other members of the committee? Any questions, comments from council? From the public? Thank you very much. Motion to move this nomination onto our next council meeting on Tuesday, September 13.
Second.
All in favors?
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. President. That's all.
Thank you, Councilor. Thank you, Councilor Calixte. We will go then from the Personnel Committee to the Public Works Committee. Councilor Walsh.
Thank you, Council President. We have 3 items on the agenda this evening. The first being a presentation from Lancaster Bikes, the second being Administration Resolution Number 77, the acceptance of a statue for Ewell Plaza, and the third being Administrative Bill Number 19, establishing definitions of sewer laterals. So to kick us off, I believe we do have a presenter from Lancaster Bikes, Adriana Atencio.
Good evening. My name is Adriana Atencio, and I'm wet not because I rode my bike, but because I walked here. But if I did ride my bike, I would have fenders, I would have my rain cape. My neighbor took it to go hunting for Sasquatch with his 3-year-old. But appropriate rain gear is always great when it's raining. What do you know? So it is possible to still ride a bike or walk around the city and stay dry. But thank you so much for having us here and letting us give you this short report. So Lancaster Bikes has accomplished a number of things this past year. We've done some public events, info sharing, some tables with printed information and interaction with city citizens. We were at Open Streets this year. We were at the Commonwealth Spring Bike Fling, and we did the back to school event at Clipper Stadium. Greg Paulson, who is the chairperson of Lancaster Bikes, provided information to the city police on the Pennsylvania bicycle law. He met with 4 different platoons this year and provided information from the vehicle code, as well as had open discussion with the police department on enforcement issues. And this is something we'd like to see more of, especially with a new police chief. We'd like to get in there a little bit more and do even more training. We think enforcement is a really big deal on both sides, not just for cyclists, but for motorists as well, and vice versa. We assisted the city with the annual bike counts. And we met with the engineers as well as the city that designed the Walnut Street Bikeway, and we walked the route and critically discussed the pluses and the minuses of the route. What's been really pleasant to see is following the review and the comments of the plan, there have been modifications that have begun to been implemented. And that's been really great to see. So we're looking forward to seeing even more of those modifications happening. We've met with and established working relationships with Stephen Campbell, the City of Lancaster's Director of Public Works, as well as Will Clark, the Director of Land Use and Transportation from the Lancaster County Planning Department. But we do have some priorities for the coming year. We want to continue to assist the city and its other partners in engaging and educating the public on better bicycling. We would like to have additional opportunities to review and comment on the implementation of the active transportation plan and the installation of bike lanes and other bicycle infrastructure. And we would like to continue to assist in annual bike counts and data collection. Data is really important, especially when it comes to crash data, when it comes to getting, stop signs places, lights places, roundabouts, etc. We don't necessarily collect data in the best way, and I don't think it's anybody's actual fault. It's just the way that the world works. And we do things in a way that is a little bit more reactive instead of preventative. And I don't think it's our city's fault. I think it's the way state code is written, and I think it's the way that federal code is written. But if there are ways that we can change that, we want to discuss it, and we want to figure that out. We want to make our streets safer for everyone. And when we make our streets safer for pedestrians and for cyclists, we inherently make our streets safer for motorists as well. So the one thing that we really, really, really want to see, and that we have been asking for years, is the establishment of a full-time bicycle pedestrian coordinator in the city. And we are more than willing to help you design the job description for this. Some things that we are thinking of as far as a bicycle pedestrian coordinator: they would help provide consistent education and messaging around the active transportation plan and Vision Zero. They would sit on traffic commission. They would work with the parking authority to ensure bicycle parking is funded and on the street and not just relegated to the sidewalk, keeping our sidewalks open and safe for pedestrians, but also open for restaurants to have really nice tables and everything. If we are meant to be riding in the street, we should also have places to park our bicycles in the street as well. And something that a bike ped coordinator could also do is manage a city bike rack program as well. But our continuing concerns are, uneven enforcement of the traffic code, resulting in more dangerous streets for bicycle riders. Examples include double parking in the bicycle lanes, just double parking in general. We know it's Lancaster, everybody loves to double park. It's not safe though. And we'd just love to see more enforcement in equitable ways. But that's all I have. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you. I just have a couple questions.
Sure.
Can you talk about Lancaster Bikes as an entity itself? How many folks are active? How many members do you have? How can people get active in joining and advocating?
How many members do we have? We have a number of members throughout the community. For example, I represent the Commonweal on Lancaster Bikes. We have representatives from the city, from LGH. We have interested citizens. Basically, anybody can join Lancaster Bikes. It is open. Our meetings are open as well. If you are an interested party in cycling, you are welcome to join our meetings. They are the fourth Thursday at 9 a.m., and we've been holding them by Zoom. I would be more than happy to provide my information because I can't remember Greg Paulson's information off the top of my head at the moment. But if anybody would like to join us, we are more than happy to take more folks on. Cycling is important, and with the way our environment is going and everything, we need more people to believe in the power of bikes. So the more the merrier.
Great, thank you. And thank you for your continued work. Any other questions from committee members? For Ms. Atencio. council as a whole? The public? All right, well, thank you so much for the presentation.
Thank you.
Moving right along, we have Administration Resolution Number 72, which is the acceptance of a statue for Ewell Plaza. Director Delfs, if you wouldn't mind.
Good evening, Council, Mayor, members of the public. I know I don't usually handle Department of Public Works items, but we're going to change it up a little bit tonight. Office of Public Art actually falls within CPED, but this particular action is within our public realm, so it kind of falls in between the two. I just wanted to give you a little bit of background about this particular action that's before you tonight. I think many of you may be aware already, but for those who don't, upon the establishment of the Ewell Plaza, just a block or so from here, at the site of the former Lancaster Square, the Barney Ewell Legacy Committee met with Mayor Sirachi and myself and former public art manager Joe Davis. That was in early 2020 to propose the installation of a bronze statue of Barney Ewell in Ewell Plaza. Probably worth taking a moment to recognize the members of the Barney Ewell Legacy Committee. It's notable members of McCaskey alum, Ron Ford, Art Morris, Ken Stout, and Jeremiah Miller. That committee has been working with us for the better part of 2 years to coordinate the process of selecting an artist and ultimately citing that piece in the coming months. Also want to note that this all happened with the guidance of the Public Art Advisory Board, and in conjunction with the PAB, the Barney Ewell Legacy Committee disseminated a request for proposal throughout the state of Pennsylvania. The committee held a town hall meeting via Zoom to introduce the appointed artist, to introduce the selection panel for the artist. There was an artist panel created to actually review and select potential artists. Ultimately, Chad Fisher, the artist Chad Fisher, was selected to craft the piece, and Mr. Fisher has done a number of similar works throughout the United States, so he's a well-accomplished artist. Following the selection of Mr. Fisher, project advisor Lenwood Sloan, who was also former chair of our Public Art Advisory Board, invited the committee to present information to the PAB. The public had an opportunity to learn more about the project, and ultimately, Mr. Fisher not only engaged the PAB in that way, but he also has been working with McCaskey students as well in designing the statue's base. So there's been a lot of good interaction between the committee itself, the artist, and the community throughout the better part of this process. And really, we're just here today to take the formal step of accepting the donation from the Barney Ewell Legacy Committee. That has followed requirements that we have as part of our donation policy. And we're at the moment of truth here. We're expecting the statue to be sited in the plaza, installed in the plaza in November. And we'll share some more information about an event that's associated with that installation at the time.
Wonderful.
Happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Any questions from other council or other committee members? Council as a whole?
Councilor Walsh. Dr. Delfs, just wondering, since this is a donation, and obviously the resolution is required for us to accept it, are there any additional considerations for insurance that the city would take on with this donation, or is that included in what is happening in the rest of the plaza?
It actually has its own maintenance agreement, which is part of the donation policy. We need to iron out those components of the work. In this case, the artist Chad Fisher will be providing some of that routine maintenance over time. So we have looked at that carefully. The decision, the location in the plaza was actually made in conjunction with the landscape architects that designed the plaza, although the maintenance will be separate.
Thank you.
Any questions from the public?
The which, I'm sorry? The value, I don't have that with me right at the moment, but I could ask the Barney Ewell Legacy Committee, get you that information.
I'll just add that we are very appreciative that the cost of the statue and the statue itself will be donated to the city of Lancaster, and that the Barney Ewell Legacy Committee has been actively fundraising for the development of the Ewell statue.
Any other questions from the public? So I will make a motion to move Administrative Resolution 77 to full council on September 13th.
So moved.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Director Telfs.
Is there a second, Mr.?
That's it.
Okay. Your microphone wasn't on. We just didn't hear you. Mr. Harris didn't hear you.
And last on our agenda is Administration Bill Number 19, which establishes definitions of sewer laterals, to which we have Director Campbell, who would be able to speak to that this evening.
I know everybody's here for this.
A very, very important piece of legislation. Thank you very much for hearing this. This is a matter that almost is the definition of clarification. It's to make sure that the terminology related to sewer lateral is not confused with the terminology for service line, which is usually used exclusively for water service, and that it makes it clear that the responsibility for the sewer lines, which are the lines that bring the sewer from your home, are the responsibility of the property owner, to which the sewer line is attached, to which the sewer lateral is attached. There's one place where the definition is described very, very clearly, and then another place in the legislation where it is referred to. Otherwise, the ordinance itself is unchanged in every other respect.
Thank you. Any questions from committee members? From council as a whole? Oh, go ahead.
This happens to be an interesting topic for me. So, I'm sorry. I'm wondering if, well, not wondering. So, the sewer lateral is the one in the street, not the one that comes from the house to the street.
This is the one that comes from the street, from the house to the street. There are two terms of art, and they were often used interchangeably. A service line usually used for water, and a sewer lateral used for sewage or for wastewater. And because they were used interchangeably in different legislation, it was often misrepresented or unclear. And that unfortunately created a couple of peculiar and challenging situations that needed to be solved through semantics. And it was deemed that the best way to solve it was to solve it at the source.
Okay, so is there a different name for where it connects to the street?
It's the connection. I mean, it's
Okay.
no. I mean, no. It's not a different name.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions from council members? The public? All right. So I will make a motion to move Administration Bill number 19 to full council on September 13th.
So moved.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Great.
And may I beg your indulgence for an announcement that I neglected to make sure was on the agenda?
Yes, please.
We had, as many of you know, we had introduced stormwater ordinance changes which would ordinarily go to second reading at the next council meeting, which is on the 13th. We also committed to meet earnestly with the engineering community, the stormwater engineering community, and we got a lot of very, very good input from that community and wanted to make sure that we incorporated it. So there are several items that we'll be proposing as amendments to the legislation that had been proposed. That amended legislation will be coming before you before the 13th so that it can be reviewed at the 13th, and then we will be looking forward to a vote on the amended legislation on the 27th. So I just wanted to inform you of that so that you'd be looking forward and know that the steps that we've taken to try to make sure that the engineering community, which would be the entity that can implement and make sure that we're meeting our stormwater regulations and goals, are fully on board, or at least as on board as practical, given the challenges we have in front of us. So,
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. And that concludes the agenda for Public Works Committee.
Thank you, Councilor Walsh. We go then to the Finance Committee. Councilor Bakay.
Thank you, Council President. The Finance Committee has, three items on the agenda this evening. The first one is the 2023 budget request from the Lancaster Public Library. I see that we have Ms. Holland, Ms. Hall, any other staff member? I see you all back there. Hello, library folks. If you'd like to come up to the podium. The library rolls deep, and I appreciate that.
Good evening. My name's Alyssa Holland, and I am the Executive Director of Lancaster Public Library. First and foremost, I want to say thank you very much for all of the support you continue to give to us, not only in our operating budget, but in the huge support you have been in helping us with our RACB and our Keystone Grant and all the other support you have given us as we get ready to move to our new home in Ewell Plaza. So, thank you very much. Now on to my request. We start every board meeting with our mission and our vision statement. We feel that that's important to make sure that we continually remember what our mission is. As it's stated, the Lancaster Public Library inspires, empowers, and strengthens our community by connecting people with information, ideas, and enriching experiences. We try to live up to that mission every day through our work at the library. Lancaster Public Library is very pleased to tell you that 43% of the city residents have a library card. And last year they borrowed over 200,000 pieces of material from the library, which equates to $4 million worth of materials borrowed by Lancaster City residents in 2021. Lancaster Public Library has the largest, most robust collection in all of the county throughout the public libraries. We have over 192,000 items in our collection, which includes an extensive collection of electronic resources as well as databases that we finance. 21% of our budget is spent on e-resources. And this material is not kept just in the city. It is borrowed by everybody throughout the county. Any library patron, no matter who library or what library they go to, can borrow materials and we will send it out to them. So although many people say, well, I don't use Lancaster Public Library, they do. Our materials can be found throughout the county at any time. We spend roughly $200,000 annually to curate our collection, replacing old materials and adding our new titles to our collection. The state mandates that 12% of our operating expenses must be in curating the collection. We are one of the only libraries in the area that meets that standard. Also, Lancaster Public Library is very proud to say that we have the most trained librarians of all the libraries in the county. And a trained librarian means that we have a master's in library science. That way, we feel that we can give the best help possible in both reference and any other type of help or finding information, and it allows us to confidently answer the 2,000 reference questions that we get a year. And that goes beyond where's the bathroom and is the bathroom open. These are true questions. We have many questions about the history of Lancaster and of genealogy. We are the library that people turn to from not only around the country, but around the world. But we go beyond being a book depository. We are not your great-grandmother's library where you can find a few lovely items in print. We also are very proud to have the Duke Street Business Center, which at some point is going to have to be renamed when we go to Queen Street. But until then, it is still the Duke Street Business Center. We have one of the first autism resource centers in a library in the country. We have a very extensive Lancaster collection, and in fact, we have titles that Lancaster History does not own. So we go back and forth when needing to borrow materials with one another. We lend hotspot devices. We have e-resources, including e-books, e-audio books, and a variety of streaming services that includes movies, music, and books in those services also. We have youth and adult programming. We lend American Girl dolls, tabletop and lawn games, baking pans, musical instruments, and museum passes. We have an in-depth collection. The big news is, though, why we are here today, is that Lancaster Public Library has to raise over 63% of our annual operating budget. That is comes through library generated items through fundraising, fines, and various fees. These are the same numbers that I showed you last year. The study is from 2018, and it paints a fairly grim comment on our library. The national average of per capita spent by municipalities is $37.62. At Lancaster Public Library, it's $1.49. That's a huge difference, and we often say, as we sit around the table brainstorming what we could do, and that always ends with, if only we had the funding. These are state numbers that also show a very drastic difference between what we offer and how we are funded. We are ranked the 4th library in the state out of 450 public libraries that generates other revenue, meaning that we generate it ourselves. We're 4th to the Carnegie in Pittsburgh, the Free Library of Philadelphia, the York Library, who had a contract with the School District of York to provide all of their library services, and then us. We also have the 8th largest service area and provide the materials to cover that area. The bad news is that we are ranked 439. That's just Lancaster Public Library. That's not Lancaster County or any of the other libraries in Lancaster County. It's just the library across the street and in Mountville. We are ranked 439 out of 450 for local funding per capita. Again, there's that story. If only we had that funding. But we're looking forward, and we are very excited to our next chapter, our move to Ewell Plaza. We are packed and ready to go. Well, maybe that's a bit of a stretch. I'm packed and ready to go. But we look forward to a ribbon cutting that we hope will be early second quarter of 2023. And there's our timeline. We began the quiet phase of fundraising in the midst of a pandemic, and we hope to complete the construction either in February or early March of 2023, and then it will be about a 2-month moving in period where we will be adding our library book shelving, our new furniture, and then the daunting task of moving 1 block from Duke to Queen Street. We are thinking about just, handing it over, hand over hand, but we will get movers to do that. So again, I thank you very much for your support. Just as a reminder, you have promised the library for this year $100,000, and we ask. This was a growing year for us. I forgot to mention earlier that we did increase wages for all of the staff in the library to be able to continue to attract and retain the talent that we have now. And so we are asking the city to please consider a 9%, at least a 9% increase in funding for 2023. But before I end, I will introduce Aaron Sherman. He is the board president, and he is followed behind by a variety of our board members.
Thank you, Alyssa. Thank you for having us, Council. As she mentioned, my name is Aaron Sherman. I'm the board chair of the Lancaster Public Library. I'm joined here by a number of other board members. I have been serving on the board since 2016, partly as a way to serve the community and partly as a way to support an organization that I've basically loved since I was a child. It's really hard to overstate the impact that the Lancaster Public Library has. Lissa and Jamie and the entire team really do a phenomenal job of serving the community on, as Lissa explained, a very limited budget. In all honesty, I think that the only real limitation to the library's ability to serve the community and to impact lives in the community is the financial resources that are available to do that work. Obviously, all of you have a very challenging job to balance a whole lot of priorities and to ensure that city dollars are spent wisely. The good news is that supporting the public library is one of the smartest investments a city government can make, quite frankly. There are very few organizations that offer the community such a strong return on investment. As Lissa said at the outset, we really value our relationship with the city, and we're excited through our move to Ewell Plaza to continue playing whatever role we can in making Lancaster a dynamic place to be. So thank you for your support.
Do you have any questions that we can answer?
Thank you very much, Ms. Holland. I'll take questions from the committee or members of council. Councilor Caliste.
Thank you. Your presentation was very informative. It sounds like the service is very successful, but we know that there is always room for improvement. So what part of the service or what areas of the library would you like to see improved? And what would you need to do that?
The key thing, the number one resource that I would immediately use more funding for is to hire more staff. I mean, we are ranked 439th in 450 public libraries in Pennsylvania on a staff member librarian per cap, division of how many patrons. So I would absolutely add more staff. And we brought on a new librarian position this year, which was a librarian who focuses on early literacy. So that's from birth to school-age children, just to get out and be in the neighborhood. And that's what we would love to do, to have more people not only working inside the library itself, but also to go to where the people are and to spread the word and educate them about the importance of the library and how it serves everybody, no matter who or what you are, from birth to death, all for free.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Walsh.
What is the total operating budget for the library?
1.3 million.
1.3, and you said of that.
And that has been pretty steady even as prices go up.
And you said you fundraise or have some sort of earned revenue of 63% to cover that?
Yes.
Of that percentage, what's the breakdown for fees and revenue? Like, how much is the library actually earning per year?
I don't have that. I can get that for you. I will say that due to streaming, our revenue has dropped because if you stream something, it automatically poofs back. And so we don't have late fees.
Okay. And then one follow-up question, and I could probably find this out too, but historically, like year after year, what has the city given to the library? You said 100,000.
You've been at 100,000 for the last couple of years, I believe.
Like 5 years, you think? 5?
I'm sorry, I don't know
That's
that,
okay.
what the history has been.
We can provide that to you, Councilor Walsh. I think, I remember at one point it was at 75,000 when I was on council, and then it jumped to 100,000, but that number has not moved in my time as mayor.
Thank you, and thank you, Mayor.
Councilor Baker?
Go ahead.
You all don't, they come to me just because I'm council president, but this is actually remarkably well timed. We give our annual contribution to the library in installments, and so they send us, it's actually a really well-written letter, so whoever put that together, Jamie, is that, yeah, thank you. So, yeah, but I also want to say, just with, in light of my daytime employment, which makes it sound more exciting than it is as staffer at the Lancaster County Homelessness Coalition, the library is maybe the only remaining place in Lancaster City where a person can just be without spending money, and many of our clients go there to receive services, look for a job, just get out of the heat or get out of the cold. So that in and of itself is very important. So thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the public? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And we're going to go right on to the next presentation, so you can leave that there. The next item on the agenda for the Finance Committee is Resolution Number 77. This is amending existing city fees. We have Director Hopkins.
Good evening, Council. Give me
Good evening.
just a
Yes,
minute
please
here
take
to
your time.
get this on the screen.
And thank you to the board and staff of the library.
Okay, so as you may remember, back in July, I did a presentation regarding the Maximus fee study and really discussed in that the rationale for the fee study and the rationale for the fee changes that are being proposed. We had a Exhibit A that was attached to what was then Resolution Number 56, and because this has been pushed off, we're now 21 resolutions later so the new number for the resolution is number 77. I'll provide this document to Mr. Harris after the meeting so that this can be distributed to all council members, but I wanted to go through just so I can, and the yellow highlights in this are where there are changes versus the prior Exhibit A to that prior resolution number. As I think was discussed at the August council meeting when I was not here, we went back and took a look at some of the fees related to primarily in the Community Planning and Economic Development Department to really sort of hone down a little bit more in some of the items that we were making changes to. And so I have a few things that we have added to the fee changes and a few things where we have made modifications to what we had previously presented to. So I'll briefly walk through those. And then the other thing that I wanted to mention is what is not included in here, but will ultimately be related to an item that's later on in the agenda, which is the property maintenance code rewrite. There will also be some proposed changes there to fees. There's some additional work to be done with those. A lot of it is we're looking at consolidating some of the things that are related to, for instance, the licensing and inspection fees for new rental properties. And rather than having individual fees for each step of the process, consolidating those fees as one sort of comprehensive fee for a new rental property coming on board, because all new rental properties have to be registered, they have to be licensed, and they also have to have an initial inspection. Right now, those fees are broken out as individual fees, and we want to combine them to make things more streamlined. So that will be some additional information that will come to you. The fee resolution, what we would actually like to do is have the timing of this be timed with the current adoption date for the property maintenance code changes, which is September 27th. I believe at the August meeting, what had been Resolution 56 was tabled to the September 13th meeting. And so at that meeting, we'd like to table it for another 2 weeks to the September 27th meeting. So with that said, let me walk through these changes here. The first one is just under BYOB Club, both application and administrative fees. This had previously been scaled based on the size of the facility itself, at what the capacity was at the facility. In Maximus's review, they actually determined that essentially the exact same process has to be gone through, whether you have, well, one for the original application fee, and then regardless of the size of the facility, it is basically the same process. So they determined that $65 was the actual cost of providing that service, so we've set each of those at $65. The second piece is just a change to the language that's associated with the fees. So in this case, I'm on this section here under residential 1 and 2 family dwelling construction. There are the current fee schedule has the language here that is crossed out and then is under this fee schedule to the right. What we are changing this to is what are called single trade permits, but defining what those single trades are. And this is a situation where a property owner or a developer is coming in for a building permit that is only related to windows and doors, or only related to spouting and downspouts, or only related to re-roofing. And then there's a specific fee structure for that type of work. And the concept here is that it is significantly more simple, more straightforward for the code review process and the inspection process when there is a single type of trade being done versus a more comprehensive building permit. And so that is under a separate type of fee structure. The next section where there is a change is simply on, this is under the commercial piece, and really all we're doing here is just removing this section which had a specific single trade under the commercial renovation. And so we're just removing that section altogether. The next section is under the Bureau of Health. It's Chapter 192, and this relates just to facilities that sell meat, and so there is a health inspection that has to occur at those facilities. You can see under the current fee, there's a structure for the amount of sales of meat in a year, and the fee is based on that. And this is really just a streamlining of that structure. So rather than having 5 different steps, there are 3 different steps based on or 4 different steps based on the total meat sales. And the issue here is that if you have a facility, like a corner store that sells meat, the work involved in inspecting that facility is obviously very different than going out to, say, Costco and inspecting that facility based on the sales of meat that they have. The next section then is under restaurants. And again, this is more of a streamlining of the structure for inspections at restaurants. So there is currently under the fee description, you see the number of employees. There were 6 different levels of fees related to various sizes of restaurants, and that's being streamlined into 3 groupings. So from 1 to 5 employees, the annual license fee would be $90. For 6 to 15 employees, it would be $110, and for more than 16 or more employees, it would be $140. And each of those groupings is in line with the fee study that Maximus did, the cost of actually providing the inspection services at those facilities. And then the last grouping is in the zoning category, and this is a really good example of where Maximus made a determination that the cost to provide the specific zoning service, after review by the folks in zoning and planning, they made a determination that these are things that actually should be fees under the actual cost to provide the service. And the challenge with each of these fees is that the same type of application and review process is done for a residential property owner versus a commercial property owner, a business, or a larger, say a larger development. And so we have the challenge where we have a lot of work comes before the zoning officer for inspection or review for an individual residential property owner. And much like we have what we decided was a subsidized service for small stormwater plan reviews, the determination was made here that we should also reduce the fees, the zoning fees, underneath what Maximus says it actually costs to provide the service, so that we have a reduced impact on those residential property owners, which by volume are the largest number of customers who come in front of zoning. The only caveat to that is the second to last fee here, which is zoning ordinance text and/or map amendment. Douglas Smith, in reviewing the Maximus study and his actual time related to those text amendments, which are much more likely to be related to a large, an ask by a larger developer, that the amount of time that he spends on those text amendments is somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 hours. And so that $1,300 fee actually equates to that 10 hours of time. So those are the only additions or changes to the Exhibit A that we had presented to you back in July. And with that, I'll just open it up to any questions that there might be.
Thank you very much. Excuse me. Are there any questions from the committee or members of council? And just to clarify that process, this originally was tabled until next week's meeting.
Correct.
But we will be ultimately discussing it and bringing it up for vote on the 27th. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay. Questions from members of the public? Okay. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you.
And that takes us to Bill number 20 of 2022. That's the general obligation bond issue. And I see our bond counsel. Good evening. Thank you for doing the AV.
Okay. Oh, yeah. So Daryl Peck, as you know, from Concord Public Finance is here with us, and also Bill McCarty from Bill McCartney. He neither sings nor plays an instrument, as far as I'm aware. Bill McCarty from Barley Snyder is the city's bond counsel for this proposed bond issue.
Thank you very much, Daryl.
Let me first address the schedule of this. What we are, while we're having a discussion this evening about the structure of the bond issue, the additional pieces that will come at a later meeting, and I would expect this at the September 27th meeting, would be a review of the actual project list. What we would like to do is have the first reading of this ordinance actually be scheduled for the September 27th council meeting. And the reason for that is, and this is Councilor Bakay, largely for your benefit, that we like to have the number of changes between the first reading and the second reading of the ordinance be as few as possible. The draft ordinance that you see, that you received from Mr. Harris, includes the usual blanks that are the total amount of the bond issuance, who the bond underwriter is, what the interest rates are, debt service schedule. All those things will be added later on in the process when we actually do the bond auction itself and bring the ordinance back for second reading and adoption. So, and normally what you have with the ordinance is also a project list. So there have been some changes to the project list that you would have seen earlier this year when we reviewed our preliminary request for basically interim financing for capital projects. There's still some work being done primarily on the general fund portion of that list, and I'll talk a little bit about that when we get to the size of the bond issue. That work is continuing on, but we'll have that project list to review along with the first reading of the ordinance on September 27th.
Okay.
So with that, I'm going to flip to the first part of this summary, and I'll sort of try to give the brief summary and then turn it over to Daryl to talk about some of the details. But when we had talked previously, the size of the general fund portion of this was about $22,750,000. The stormwater size was about 12.1 million, and the water portion of it was about 23.6 million. So what we're showing here on the summary is the same numbers for stormwater and for water, but a reduced amount for the general fund portion of the project. And this is part of the ongoing review of those capital projects that's happening between the mayor, Director Campbell, and myself as we go through trying to true up the projects that can truly be done in the next few years. Also trying to ensure that where we have grant requests out there, that we are trying only to fund the city match portion of that and anticipating that we will get grants in some cases. And so that work is continuing. But for right now, what we did and what Daryl did in his numbers is to hone in on that $17.5 million number as the amount from this bond issuance that would be available for general fund projects. The only other piece I just wanted to highlight here, and then Daryl can get into some of the particulars, is when the debt service impact would occur for each of the portions of the bond issue. So if you look at this row 5 here, both for stormwater and for the general fund, the structure as we have it right now would have no debt service impact in 2023, and then beginning with a debt service impact in 2024. That is different for the water fund, and in there, if you look at row 8, you see additional impact in 2020. There's very minimal impact in 2024, and then in 2025, the impact would be an increase in debt service of about $1.7 million. And the reason for the difference between general and stormwater and the water fund is really around the PUC rate-making process. So in the water fund, as you know, rates inside the city are controlled by city council through ordinance changes. Rate changes for outside city customers have to go through the PUC rate-making process. We completed our most recent water rate case earlier this year, and those rates went into effect at the beginning of June. The next time, based on that rate case, the next time that we can file for a outside city rate case is January of 2024. From the time of filing until completion and rates can go into effect, it's roughly 9 months. And so the timing of this debt service impact in the water fund is based on our ability to go to the PUC for a rate increase for outside city customers early in 2024 to have that rate-making process completed later in 2024, and then 2025, we would have a full year of whatever that PUC-approved rate increase is. And that's not to say that there wouldn't, prior to that, potentially be an inside city rate change as well, but this is really timed around when we could do and complete a outside city rate case through the Public Utility Commission. So with that said, I'll let Daryl jump into some of the details that you see on the summary, and then the next 3 pages of this are really just a graphical presentation of current debt service versus what the new debt service would look like and how the structure is set up.
Very good. Good evening, members of council and mayor. With that whole introduction, Patrick already focused on the amount you're looking to finance for the various funds and the various systems. Anytime you do any borrowing, it's about where you sit here today from a budgetary standpoint. What's appropriate. Patrick and I have gone through a couple of iterations, and this is what we landed on to present to you this evening, and we believe will be what we'll be moving forward with. But again, in that whole consideration always is, think about like your home mortgage. Anytime you're going to do such a big investment or purchase, it's frankly almost necessary to finance it. You want to finance it within your budgetary constraints and your objectives. And clearly, you never want to finance something longer than its useful life. The project list is real bricks and mortar items. We're not talking about, police cars. We're not talking about trucks. We're talking about longer term assets. So when you look at these, the general fund, we're going to finance over a period of 20 years. The stormwater portion, we're going to finance over a period of 25 years. And the water fund, we're going to finance over a period of 25 years. Again, pretty reasonable, appropriate, and customary. And along that same line, getting back to your house, we'd all like to say, hey, we're going to pay off, our mortgage in 10 years. But the fact is, if you can't afford it or it's not appropriate, you need to go over that longer period of time. Again, within reasonableness and appropriateness. So I'm going to do these by fund. I think I'm going to go down the columns. It's easier, I think. So the general fund, we're going to provide $17.5 million for the projects. Your existing 2022 general fund debt service is about $4.6 million. It was already going to go up in 2023 by that $2 million. That's a function of the refinancing that was done last year. So the new budgetary impact, or the new annual cost of borrowing that $17.5 million, is line 5, about $873,000. So your resulting 2024 debt service will be a little over $7.5 million. And then it'll stay there and for the near term. And when we look at the graphs, we'll see about where it's going to go thereafter. On the stormwater, we're going to finance about $12.1 million for projects. Your existing 2022 debt service, again, when I say existing, it's what you're already affording to pay. It's what you're already paying within your budget. It's a little over $1.1 million. As Patrick indicated, the plan is not to have any impact in 2023. And then the full impact of borrowing that $12.1 million will be about $860,000. And you'll realize that in 2024. And again, it'll pretty much stay there for the near term. So your resulting debt service in 2024 will be about $1,975,000. In the water fund, $23.6 million for projects. Your existing 2022 debt service is about $12.5 million. As Patrick indicated, there'll be no impact in 2023, no impact in 2024, and then a full impact of that borrowing of about $1.7 million. So that's the near-term look. I think this is what you're focused on about going into the next budget, or 2 budgets, or 3 budgets. So those are your budgetary impacts, or how much more expense you'll have within those budgets related to this borrowing. So again, that's the near-term look for just the impacts over the next 3 years. So then, if you join me on page 2, this is a comparison of existing general fund debt service, which are the red bars. That's a little difficult to see up there, but the red bars, and the resulting debt services, then the green bars. So, from 2022 to 2023, as I indicated, your debt service was already going to go up $2 million as a result of the refinancing. And then that next increase in 2024 up to $7.5 million, that's the approximate $870,000. You can see then it's going to stay at about $7.5 million for the next 6 years. Then in 2030, it'll drop or be reduced by about $1,165,000. And then again in 2035, it'll drop by another $1.7 million. This is intentional. It's that whole concept about looking forward. This is probably not going to be the last borrowing the city does. I know it's a managed process, but here, it's like providing that ability looking down the road to say, okay, if we're going to be doing other borrowing, we already have it built into our forward-looking pro forma or forward-looking debt service schedule. So those numbers aren't magical. As I was talking to Patrick today, somebody says, why is it that number? It's not. It's really just to kind of keep that step down. You see, we already had those step downs in the red bars as well. I think it's just a good, again, forward-looking budgetary capacity. And then the entire new borrowing will be paid off in 20 years by 2042. That's why it's referred to as the kind of this 20-year step down wrap. It's kind of wrapping around and stepping down out, in outward years. Next page is stormwater.
Went too far.
This one, again, 12.1 million for projects, and you can see your existing stormwater debt service is pretty level there at about 1.1 or 1.2 million dollars. Here we're going to finance the $12.1 million on actually a 25-year level, meaning you're going to pay the same payments for this new borrowing in the future. So it'll go up to $1,975,000 when your existing debt service goes away in 2043. The new annual debt service will be that $860,000. So really not an exact opportunity here for that step down, because you don't already have the step downs, and this is certainly kind of a different animal or different system compared to general fund.
Yeah, the thing I'd add there is that the reason that we have those step downs in the general fund is because over a period of 20 plus years, there have been bond issues in the 3 to 6 year range, and so there is a longer history of debt issuance related to general fund activities than there is in stormwater, which the first borrowing that we have here is a Penvest borrowing, and then we also had a piece of the 2018 bond issue, which had a stormwater component. So there just isn't that longer history of borrowings as there are in the general fund to allow for that step down over time. And so effectively with stormwater, each time there is a new debt issuance to a large extent, we're going to be layering on top of what is out to 2043 level debt service. The first step down that comes is now from 2044 and beyond.
Then lastly, on page 4, the same graphical presentation of water fund debt service. This is for the 23.6 million in projects, the 25-year term. While it says wrap, you can see that, or you can maybe barely see that the existing red lines go down by about $500,000 from 2040 to 2042. So for all intents and purposes, again, keeping no impact until 2024 for the reasons that we already talked about. You'll have the $1.7 million increase up to about $14.3 million in 2025, and then paying off this loan in 25 years, out through 2047. Again, same story as the stormwater. Looking at your existing debt profile, and of course keeping this borrowing within 25 years, there's just really not a lot of opportunity to have those step downs here, as is more important for the general fund. So that is both the near-term numerical or budgetary impacts, and then the graphs are meant to show you kind of how the long-term picture looks like, and takes you from where you are today to post borrowing and what your budgetary impacts will be. Patrick talked about the timing. First reading on the 27th of September. I guess if necessary, finance meeting on October 3rd. And then we're probably looking at doing the bond auction and locking in the rates at one of your meetings in October, either the 11th, probably not as likely, and more likely October 25th. And that'll still allow us to get this done before Thanksgiving and to close before the end of the year. And from here, well, maybe I'll stop there and certainly entertain any questions.
I do have a quick question, or maybe a point of clarification for council. So earlier this year, we saw a list of projects that we talked about being able to be reimbursed with the bond issue. This is the bond issue that we're talking about. And so some of those projects we should see when we get to see that list. Is that correct?
Yes. So council approves initial funding of a total of $10 million back in March, I believe it was. Some of those projects are ongoing, and we are expending our own fund, internal funds for those projects. You then did a second round of capital project funding approval that was, I believe, another about $6.2 million. Any of the funds that have been expended to date and will be expended through the closing of this bond issue will be reimbursed with the proceeds from this bond issue. So this bond issue is basically all-inclusive of those first two original funding authorizations and, both additional funding for some projects and for additional projects that weren't on that preliminary list.
Sure. Thank you. Are there any additional questions from members of the committee? Or members of council? Or members of the public? Okay. Then I will hear a motion to move this bill to first reading to our September 27th meeting.
So moved.
So moved.
I'll second.
Thank you very much. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I appreciate you being here this evening. And Council President, that concludes the Finance Committee meeting.
Thank you very much, Councilor Bakay. I'll give these gentlemen some time to break down. And then hand it off to Councilor Craig for the Community Planning Committee.
Thank you, Council President. Community Planning has 4 items on the agenda this evening. First being Administration Resolution 70, amending the sewer control plan to include the redevelopment of 347 North Queen Street. And I'm going to think Mr. Delphs will address that.
Hello again. I'll take them in order here, if that's okay.
That's correct. Fine.
The first one on the list here is 347 North Queen Street, one of the sewer modules. Just wanted to give you some basic summary information about the project. Bowery Development Company is proposing a 7-story mixed-use structure. This is at the southeast corner of North Queen Street and East Lemon Street. This is the parking lot, the surface parking lot that's catty-corner to the Belvedere Inn. The ground floor is proposed for retail and a fitness space, while the upper floors will be 72 residential units, single and double apartments. Happy to provide additional information about status of approvals in terms of land development. If you have any questions, because it was a parking lot in recent history, any change to this site will increase the sewer capacity. We had to take a look at it, both our city planning team and our public works team, to ensure that there is capacity in the sewer for this new land development proposal. And we have confirmed that's the case.
So this is a new plan development.
This is a proposed development right at that site, on that corner of North Queen and Lemon.
Okay. Are there any questions from the committee?
You said you could give some updates on the rest of the land planning. Would you mind doing that for this particular project?
Sure. Our chief planner, Mr. Smith, is out sick tonight, but I do have some notes, so I think I can cover most of the details here. The project that's proposed at this site is actually by right, according to the zoning. So at least at this time, we don't expect there to be a zoning action on the site. There are additional approvals, however, that are needed. There has been a conceptual application reviewed by the Historical Commission. It will go back to the Historical Commission again for a recommendation, and then ultimately will come to City Council with that recommendation. In addition to that, I do think the Planning Commission has seen this project as well at the sketch plan phase, given that it is a relatively significant project for the downtown, wanted to provide a preliminary presentation to the Planning Commission before it came in a formal capacity.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions from the committee? Council as a whole? From the public? I'll hear a motion to move this to full council.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, thank you. And we will move to Administration Resolution Number 71, amending the sewer control plan to include the redevelopment of 223 North Water.
Thank you, Councilor Craig. 223 North Water Street. This is another sewer module for your approval. This project, I can't recall if we talked about this at council or not. This is the Pennsylvania College of Art and Design. They're proposing an adaptive reuse on the site, actually at the old Chameleon Club building, and that will include ground floor commercial on the Prince Street side, and then on the Water Street side of the building, it will include classroom and studio space. The upper floors of the project would be reserved for about 43 student dormitories. And similar to the project that we just discussed, this will be an increase to the sewer flow into the system. And so our team did take a look to ensure that there's capacity in the system, and they deemed that there is sufficient capacity for this project as well.
So this one is just a little different than the previous one, correct? Because the previous one was a new planning sewer.
Correct.
And this one is for one that already exists.
Correct. So we're moving from, in the case of PCAD, we're moving from an existing building with additional development on that same site, both on the ground floor and then the residential dormitories, and that increases the sewer flow. Whereas the other project at 347 North Queen, right now, nothing but a parking lot, so it's entirely new.
Thank you. Are there questions from the committee? Questions from council?
If I may. Can you also give an update to the planning approval process for that particular project and where it stands?
Sure. Let's see here. So this is why I do believe we maybe have spoken about this a bit at council in the past. The project has achieved approvals for historic and zoning and historic review, and it's currently under review for land development. So I think that we probably touched on this through the Historical Commission action. No new building footprint will be added, although a small addition on the rear third floor will be added where there is a current balcony.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions from council as a whole? Questions from the public? Seeing none, I'll hear a motion to move this to full council on the 13th.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is Administration Bill Number 18, amending the rental housing ordinance. Good evening.
Good evening, council. While James Nixon, our bureau chief for property maintenance and housing inspections, gets set up, I'll give you a little overview of what we're presenting tonight related to the rental property ordinance. Met most of you. Rebecca Geiser, Deputy Director within the Community Planning and Economic Development Department. I want to say thanks, first of all, to Michelle for joining us. She's our admin assistant in the Bureau, and appreciate you being here and all of your hard work for this initiative and for the Bureau as a whole. So in the past couple of years, we've been developing a multi-pronged approach to legislation for property maintenance. And as you know, you all passed the lead ordinance changes in April, and that was a big accomplishment for helping to prevent lead poisoning in our kids through rental inspections. We bring to you tonight the rental property ordinance, which governs our work around systematic inspections of rental properties in the city. And then later in the year, we intend to finalize this whole process with proposed revisions to the property maintenance ordinance. Really, the work in this bureau is a critical part of the goal of housing quality in strong neighborhoods in the mayor's strategic plan. And our bureau is working really closely with other bureaus in the department, with the Department of Neighborhood Engagement, the Critical Repair Program, the short-term rental ordinance with planning, and we're just happy to be collaborating across the city. And I want to say thank you to Mr. James Nixon and the inspectors and the staff in this bureau for all of the strides they've made to ensure safe housing for our residents. We're really honored to have such a professional and competent team in this bureau. So I'm pleased to introduce to you James Nixon, Bureau Chief of Property Maintenance and Housing Inspections.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Nixon.
Good evening. Thank you. Thank you, Rebecca. Good evening, Council and the public. As stated, I am James Nixon, the Bureau Chief of Property Maintenance and Housing Inspections. Tonight, I'm going to provide some details and highlights of the new of how Chapter 238 Rental Property Ordinance supports and protects the renters of the City of Lancaster. I will provide key updates to this ordinance, the new way of enforcement that the Bureau has taken on, how we're moving more efficiently, as well as how our community engagement actions are going to occur. How does this ordinance service the public? The City of Lancaster Residential Rental Property License Program provides an efficient system of compelling both absentee and local landlords to maintain 13,486 residential units. The current code standards, We hold landlords accountable to these standards. In 2021, the Bureau inspected 2,638 units. Our inspections in the last year have produced 8,657 violations that ensure city's residents are protected and provided safe and quality housing. This ordinance provides jurisdiction to protect households from lead hazards. This ordinance grants the ability to ensure that approximately 12,000 rental properties built prior to 1978 will be inspected for possible lead hazards during the systematic inspections and minimizes lead hazards within the housing stock. The registration process of this ordinance will be streamlined with the license process being reduced for administrative steps, for landlords will no longer require an initial registration. Approved properties will be issued a 2-year rental license starting in 2023. Each license shall remain in force for the 2 years of the date of issuance. The Bureau will ensure that rental properties are regularly scheduled for systematic inspections no more frequently than every 2 years and no less frequently than once every 6 years. The Bureau will focus its limited resources on units that do not meet the minimum quality standards. Property determined by code officials that do not meet adequate housing standards will be inspected on a 2-year basis. For example, in the past year, 234 properties have had 10 or more violations, which may result in these properties being scheduled for a systematic inspection on a 2-year cycle. The Bureau will inspect all short-term rentals annually. The Bureau of Property Maintenance and Housing Inspections are committed to educating landlords and property owners, as well as engaging the community to better the housing stock. We recognize the importance of community and have created postcards like you see on the slide that introduces each sector's housing inspector, so our residents can recognize who we are and that we are here to service their households. We will provide property owners and landlords with rental property guides to provide them at the time of license applications and renewal. We will also provide rental property checklists that will be provided prior to systematic inspections. In addition, we will provide intro to compliance letters to landlords and property owners with properties that are not in compliance with the rental ordinance. We are committed to engage our community with participation in public events such as Mayor's Neighborhood Month, which we did this year for the first time. We will provide postcards reflected on this slide that details who we are, how we do our job, and why we are here to support them. We look to be intentional in our support, in our approach to serve our residents in the city of Lancaster to ensure quality housing stock has been provided. The Bureau has created an inspection checklist which will improve the consistency of our inspections. This will be an internal checklist of reference tool for our staff to use during the inspections to ensure efficient and best practices are being met. We will provide landlords with rental property checklist guides to help preparation of the systematic inspection. This guide is for landlords and property owners to be aware of items that will be evaluated at the time of the inspection. This document summarizes major items covered in the rental inspection. Our collaborative culture. Our inspectors have been a part of designing SOPs as well as this ordinance, as well as best practices, sharing in monthly meetings, and so forth. Our Bureau has made strides in connecting with the community through neighborhood groups, partnering with the Department of Neighborhood Engagement to cohesively develop ways to better improve the quality housing standards in our communities. We have scheduled meetings with landlords in different neighborhoods to discuss how we can provide education to landlords in their roles and responsibilities to ensure positive quality of life to our city's residents. Along with the Department of Neighborhood Engagement, we have partnered with community groups and community stakeholders to conduct community walks to engage our residents and where they live at. Earlier this summer, we conducted the Beaver Street Community Walk, which saw success by engaging residents to help meet social needs, housing needs, and cultural needs. Thanks to our community partners from SOWE, Church World Services, and the city's LED team, we were able to see some major results. In canvassing Beaver Street, a property was identified and approved for a new roof, a new replacement of heating and cooling systems through the critical repair program. Both contracts together resulted in $14,895 being spent in saving this house from any future damages. In closing, I would like to thank all the individuals for the Bureau of Property Maintenance and Housing Inspections for the commitment to serve our residents in the city of Lancaster. Our team is committed to a new way of enforcement. This provides the community engagement and committed to serving our community more efficiently. I would also like to thank you all personally for all your support and commitment to serve the city of Lancaster. At this time, I'm open to answer any questions that you may have for me.
Thank you, Mr. Hendrickson. Did I hear you say that the ordinance hadn't been updated since 1978?
No, I did not make that comment. I'm not sure when the last update of the ordinance was done.
1978 was in reference to houses built before 1978 when lead paint was no longer legal.
Got it. And what types of things will be on the checklist for the landlords and tenants?
Our primary goal is to identify all health and safety concerns for landlords to be able to observe and be aware of. We're going to make sure that they're aware of how our inspection process is going to be performed and detail certain areas in each area of the home.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? Are there questions from council?
Councilor Craig, if you could just, because I'm not very familiar with the process, you mentioned that the initial registration for rental properties would no longer be required, but there is a license. What is the difference right now between those two things, and what impact, if any, does that removal have?
Thank you. So right now, the process is that the owners will submit a registration request. In addition to that registration, we will process it, the application for registration, and then move on to a license. We're going to simplify that and just do a application for license.
Great. And is that per property or per owner?
That's going to be per property.
Got it. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Actually, in that same vein, walk me through the rationale of sort of getting rid of the initial registration?
We want to simplify our process and streamline it to make it a lot easier. Right now, we're doing several different steps where we only need to do one. So what we like to do is just make sure that that process is streamlined so that there's a lot less administrative actions that need to take place. So when the application for license is submitted, I can review it, and as soon as it is approved, we can issue that license to the property. Where right now, we first do the review of the registration, and then we take an additional step to do a license.
Thank you.
Yeah. How would you hold the landlords accountable, and what you're gonna do to make sure that they comply with the ordinance?
So as I stated in the presentation, last year alone, we did over 2,600 inspections, which produced over 8,000 violations. We inform those landlords of what those violations are and give them a timeline of when those violations need to be rectified. We're taking the approach of now educating those landlords by providing them tools so that when we do come out, we can cut down on the amount of inspections that we have to conduct to be residual inspections. So in addition to the 2,600 systematic inspections that we did last year, we did over 5,000 re-inspections. So that's a lot of time and energy that we're putting into multiple units. And oftentimes that's as a result of not educating the property owners of what they're responsible for prior to us coming.
Thank you.
And may I add on to that? One of the other things that we have heard over the years is that when you have different you have own different properties and they're in different sectors of the city, that there hasn't been consistency among our inspectors. And that has also been a challenge, just in terms of, holding landlords to be equitable in terms of what our expectations are. So the guides that James and his team have worked on are not only for to help landlords be educated and know what we're coming to look at, although many of them should know by now, because they've had properties in the city for a long time. But it also is is making sure that we as a city team are being consistent in what we are expecting across our housing units, no matter who your sector officer is. So we have been talking about this and working on this since 2018, my first year in office. And I just want to thank you, James, and your team of housing inspectors. It's one of the best groups of housing inspectors that we've had in such a long time. And the way that your team is working together to address this, simplify the process, be more responsive to the needs of the landlords while also holding to account and taking the time, even though I really wanted this to happen like years ago, taking the time to really methodically work through the process has been great. And I periodically have stopped down James' office and seen some of the materials that he's developing, and look forward to rolling them out. At this point, it really is about the efficiency of our departments and really trying to focus on reducing those numbers of re-inspections because, as you saw, there's 13,486 units. There's more units that are going to be coming online, and we really need to focus our resources on those units that need the most attention. And so getting to this flexible schedule, because previously we are trying to hit each unit every 4 years, no matter what the condition, and that left bad properties get worse, and that is opposite of what we want to do. So we want to hold the landlords that aren't taking care of their properties to account more frequently, and the ones that are doing a better job, acknowledging that work and visiting them maybe in a 5 or 6 year rotation. So I'm just so pleased that this work is moving forward, and I really want to thank James, you, Rebecca, your entire team. I really think it's great Michelle is here tonight. I appreciate you being here, coming in after work, so thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Can you dig in a little bit more about what enforcement and accountability for short-term rentals is going to look like? I think, as we all know, an ordinance was passed recently by this council, and I fielded a number of constituent questions and concerns about short-term rentals which continue to operate in a non-conforming fashion, or new ones coming online. So I'm just interested to hear more about that.
Thank you. So, as we know, we are getting a abundance of short-term rentals. And with the constant turnover and the constant usage of these short-term rentals, we see it as a priority to make sure that they're inspected on a yearly basis. So in that process, they're going to be also responsible to have a yearly license renewal. So every year that they renew their license, we're going to also conduct an inspection just to ensure that our guests to the city have proper quality housing standards being met.
I can add to that as well. James and Douglas Smith have been working very closely together on how to roll out the short-term rental ordinance, and the paperwork is flowing more smoothly now between the two bureaus. So the application will come in to James, and our zoning officer, Jamil, will have to sign off. If they come to Jamil first, he'll make sure that James also sees that paperwork and that the residents or the landlords know that they also need to fill out an application for a rental license. So they really have a comprehensive list of which properties they're working on together and making sure that they seamlessly sign off together.
Thank you.
Well, are there any other questions from council as a whole? Are there questions from the public? Hearing none, I'll hear a motion. Well, hold on.
My question is about gentrification. We're talking about rental units and the inspections. Where is the oversight as far as certain people not being targeted or being forced out of the neighborhood for gentrification, or for forcing certain landlords out, like myself? As many of you know, my property has been condemned. It's been a year, and I'm nowhere closer now than I was then. So with that being said, I'd like to know who's doing the oversight. Is it just one person? It's the team to make sure there's fairness and equality and fairness across the board. That's basically my question.
Thank you, Ms. Grievous. I think you've gotten your point across.
I can take that question.
Thank you.
We have our standardized policies and procedures that we follow with each and every property through the International Property Maintenance Code, and our inspectors are trained in the same policies and procedures. Those policies and procedures are developed by the staff and approved and reviewed by myself and or Chris Dels as the department director, and then it is the responsibility of the bureau chief to ensure that those are equitably managed on a day-to-day basis.
So when there is a complaint that that's not being followed, the procedures, policy and procedures are not being followed, who, is that your role as deputy to make sure that's being followed, or?
There is an
does it go
appeal
to the-
process that I believe you are well familiar with if there is any issue with the enforcement.
And is there any conflicts of interest with the appeal? Who does it get appealed to?
Ms. Grievous, I believe that some of the details that you want to get into are going to be best heard after council one-on-one. Because
Well, I've
yeah,
tried
your-
that.
your
That's not working
questions- Your
since.
questions you've asked, like, for months. You asked the questions that you're asking now. We've answered them on several occasions.
Actually,
Re-
I have not gotten a response. That's the whole problem. This is why I keep coming. I'm still trying to get an
We
explanation.
appreciate you continuing to come, but we're going to move on.
So you don't
This-
want to answer, they don't want to answer the question. We're just,
We will gladly
Speak
answer
up.
your questions after meeting.
but why would it have to
One-on-one.
be after the
Thank you.
meeting when we're,
We're
This is
answering
what the
questions through
discussion
legal
is.
counsel at this point.
Yeah, well, in the interest of time, we're going to move on.
that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further questions from the public? Hearing none, I'll hear a motion to move this bill to full council on the 13th.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, counselors.
Thank you, Mr. Nixon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. The last item on our agenda this evening is a review of the Historical Commission's recommendation for 250 College Avenue. Director Delph, we're seeing you again.
Thank you again, Council. Councilor Craig, as you mentioned, we're here to discuss 250 College Avenue. This is the redevelopment of the old St. Joseph's UPMC hospital site. The Historical Commission recently on August 15th took action recommending approval of recommending certificate of appropriateness for this particular property. We have here today both Dominic Wicker, who is the developer of the property, Washington Place Equities. Also, Chris Peters is here from the Historical Commission as well. As noted in the application, there were targeted demolitions on the site, meaning just specific selected demolitions, and then new construction that were under consideration by the Historical Commission. Again, it was a unanimous approval. I know that we've talked a lot about this project. Maybe I'd like to invite Dominic Wicker up briefly,
Absolutely.
just to say a few words about where we are in the overall process. And then if there are any questions about the Historical Commission decision, I think either Mr. Wicker or Mr. Peters can answer those questions as well.
Hi, thank you very much. It's good to see you. As Chris said, we're moving forward. It's certainly a large project in front of us, and we've got work cut out, but we feel like we're making progress through the land development process. As Chris mentioned, we recently appeared before the Historic Commission, talked about both the new construction townhouse component as well as the multifamily component of conversion and the adaptive reuse. The commission gave us, I think, a unanimous approval. We're now moving sort of forward through our process here. Really, major challenges in front of us are just really construction costs. Since we started looking at this project about two and a half years ago, our costs have gone up by about 45%. Rents have also climbed during that period, but there's certainly a gap. So we're ably assisted by a really skilled design team, both Martin Murata Main as well as Alexander Design, and then our GC, Warfel Construction. So, while we're going through our approvals and entitlement process and wrapping that up, we're really concentrating primarily on our construction costs and trying to figure out a path forward to that. We still have hope that we would be able to start construction in first quarter of 2023. But that also is really just somewhat largely dependent on the construction costs sort of working itself out. So.
Thank you.
Sure.
Are there any questions from the committee? Any questions from council?
Councilor Craig,
Mm-hmm.
if I may. In regards to specifically the latest meeting from the Historical Review Commission, was there public present at that meeting?
There was, I think there was some comments at the end of the presentation about parking. And that was really the extent of the comments that made, if I remember correctly.
If, Mrs. Kepperling, if you could you, kind of brief us on the conversation at the Historical Commission meeting in regards to this project?
I'm Danielle Kepperling. I'm a city resident, 700 block of North Franklin, but I also sit on the Historical Commission. And I think that was correct. There was questions about the parking. There was also a discussion about the brick color. And those were the 2 points that were brought up by the public.
Okay, and how many, not that it's vitally important, but I was interested in how much of the public was there?
It was less than when the project across the street was presented.
Okay.
There was probably only a handful of people that spoke. It was less public comment than the project on College Avenue across the street where the medical building is.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you. That's it.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions from council as a whole?
Mrs. Kepperling, I'm so sorry to call you back up. If you could actually just summarize for my benefit and whomever else's, just sort of the Historical Commission's response to the project. Oh, that's a
Yeah, no, and I was just thinking about it. Overall, it was well received. There were a couple of comments because of how the townhouses come to the corner, that there was a request for them to maybe face the ends of those buildings that are visible from the corners, face them with brick instead of siding so that it matches the neighborhood, and then put more windows in. But other than that, it was well received. And taking the original hospital building, not the original because the original was torn down, but the 1950s hospital building back to what it was very well received.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, before you sit down, just to follow up to that, with these recommendations, they're simply that. It's not any sort of finality to it.
I believe, and they can attest, I believe that they were in agreement to making those recommendations as part of the approval process.
And then does that come back for reapproval?
Not if they agreed with the recommendations, then it's up to council to approve.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
If I could just follow on, Mr. Peters, do you have anything else to add as a commission member and chair? Gotcha. Thank you for that, sharing that.
Are there any further questions from the public? Okay.
Hi.
Okay. Oh, well, hi.
My name's Pamela Stoner. I live in the 900 block of Marietta Avenue. I think I was the only member of the public that attended that historical commission meeting. I was also the person who made comments at that meeting. And I'm embarrassed to say I spoke sort of angrily because I was quite taken aback by the design that was displayed at that meeting. I've attended a lot of historical commission meetings, either virtually or in person, and I've seen this group look at designs that seemed much more in keeping with the neighborhood for which they were planned. And I've seen them direct a lot of questions and make a lot of recommendations and give a lot of pushback. And I was quite shocked that the Historical Commission did not do that in this case. And I made up my mind I was going to do a little bit of research. And in doing so, I really feel that my position is that this design is not in keeping with the code that has been written as it applies to preservation and appropriateness in a heritage conservation district. I can tell you that in looking at the design standards, this design in no way meets standard number 2, which is rhythm and pattern. Rhythm means consistency, but it does not mean monotonous repetition. There are 53 of these townhouses that are being planned, and there is no variation from one unit to the next, and it is just one row after another, and it looks like nothing that you will see anywhere else in the city. We have lots and lots of townhomes stacked one up against the other, but you will never see anywhere in the city a design that is more repetitive or as repetitive as this design is. It also doesn't meet standard number 3, which is in regard to materials and textures. So the cut block foundation is not seen anywhere in this district or really anywhere else in a residential area in the city. The large panels, I always get the acronym mixed up, but the exterior insulation panel systems that are being proposed are large, they're out of scale, they're smooth, they don't look anything like the surrounding structures, the residential structures, that is. They don't reflect anything that you see directly juxtaposed to these townhomes. And these townhomes take up half of Marietta Avenue on that block, the entirety of West End Avenue, and half of West Walnut Street. So this is a large swath of structures. Finally, I believe it's standard number 4, has to do with architectural detail. And when you look at these, there is, they're very simple, and simple can be great, but they do not incorporate any of the architectural detail in any manner that one would consider when they look at not just the homes, the single homes, the duplexes, the townhomes, the long home, any of the surrounding structures. There's nothing to suggest that these townhomes are reflective of that whatsoever. So I really would like to encourage the committee to disregard the Historical Commission's recommendation. They did not follow the charge with which they are, the charge that they are set with carrying forth. That's written in the city code. They are only to consider the effect that this construction will have on the character of the surrounding neighborhood and the historical significance of that neighborhood, not the 45% increase in construction costs. I feel for that. I fully understand that a for-profit developer is looking at the bottom line, but really, the retail prices of housing has gone up almost commensurately with that construction
ma'am.
increase. You're welcome.
Thank you for your comment. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Lloyd Hartley. I live in the 900.
I'm sorry. I didn't hear your name.
Lloyd Hartley. I live in the 900 block of Marietta Avenue.
Thank you.
I support what Mrs. Stoner has told you. The houses, the center of our community really is the former Long Home, now the Presbyterian Senior Living, which has affordable housing. And the city worked very carefully with Presbyterian Senior Living in the reconstruction and building of new properties, even insisting that a carriage house of brick and stone be moved at great expense to them so that it preserved the community. That carriage house now is their main office and would face the buildings that are being proposed. the Presbyterian Senior Living maintained excellent contact with all the residents, and there was a great participation of all of the people who lived in the area in giving them feedback. And they listened, and we negotiated, and now that project is complete. The area, the blocks that go around Presbyterian Senior Living Facility, 1/4 of it would be this development. All of those homes are built of brick, stone, half-timbered stucco, and of commensurate material. The color design is natural color design, and the buildings that are proposed have a sort of harlequin clown color scheme, which do not fit at all with either the Presbyterian Senior Living Center or with the homes that are in the area. So I support the notion that that the council return this for further consideration to the Historical Commission, and to give the developers time to communicate clearly with the neighbors of this property that they wish to develop, which has not happened.
Thank you, sir.
Very much.
Are there further comments from the public? Okay. Since there are no further comments from the public, I'll hear a motion to move this to full council on the 13th.
So moved.
So move.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you so much. And that concludes community planning. Council President.
Thank you, Councilor Craig, and thank you to the members of the Historical Commission in attendance this evening. Finally, I'll let folks move. We'll go now to the Economic Development Committee. Councilor Arroyo.
Thank you, Council President. We have two energizing items this evening on our agenda.
Sorry.
I'll begin with an update regarding the city's request for proposals for housing. The application process was closed on August 22nd. Our consultant, PFM, did an initial screening of the proposals to ensure that they met the minimum qualifications and criteria that was outlined in the RFP. The review period has begun as of September 2nd and will continue until September 23rd by a committee consisting of myself, Mayor Sirachi, Council President Smith Waddell, the CPED staff, Sonia LeBron and Rebecca Geiser, utilizing a matrix that was also outlined in the RFP. In early October, the committee will deliberate and interview applicants if necessary, and recommendations will be forwarded to council with an anticipated vote at council in late October. That concludes my update regarding the housing RFP regarding the American Rescue Plan funds. Happy to answer any questions from the committee or council as a whole. The public?
Tim Studer, this on? Tim Studer, One United Lancaster. How many proposals have you gotten totaling how much in requested funds?
We received about 14 proposals, if two from one organization, so I guess that counts as a total of 14 proposals. And I'm sorry, I missed the second question.
What the total was?
Total amount, I don't have that with me unless Director Delves or Ms. King, no.
You know, I don't have it either. We just received the proposals late Friday afternoon, and we're just getting started with the review. Our review will be completed by the 23rd. Yeah, the first round of review, I should say.
Thank you. Any further or any other public comments? Great. Onto the second item on the agenda, Administration Resolution Number 75, 2022, Intermunicipal Cooperation Agreement with the School District of Lancaster for a Child Care Study.
That's me.
That's Mayor Saraki.
Somewhat exciting, although I don't think that you have seen this resolution in your packet, and I was just flipping through the attachments, and you have not seen this yet. So we're actually going to ask for this to be tabled tonight. We are awaiting a couple of changes back from the solicitor at the School District of Lancaster, but let me tell you what this is so that when it does hit your inbox, you know what it is. For some time, the City of Lancaster has been looking at both workforce development and child care needs, and really coming out of the pandemic, it has been highlighted that child care has been really impacted in terms of the number of kiddos that they can serve because of staffing shortages and so on. We're also very concerned about learning loss, both related to COVID as well as what is considered typical learning loss during the summer months. So the city and the school district have been talking about this for some time, how to address child care as it relates to workforce and accessibility to work, going to work for parents, as well as learning loss. And we've engaged in this we're seeking to engage in an intermunicipal cooperation agreement between the district and the city, that the city would be project leading on this, and the district would be essentially providing the financial resources to cover the costs related to this gap analysis. That gap analysis is going to, we're still working through what a scope of work could be, but that scope of work would essentially be looking at all school-age childcare programs before and after school, as well as summer programming for kids, to understand how many slots, if you will, are available across the district, as well as how many kids are being served, and then how many kids still need to be served. We're also talking about doing some parent focus groups and really working through the Office of Neighborhood Engagement, as well as through the district itself, to do some parent surveys to really understand what the needs are from parents. All of this to get the data to be collected and shared with the district and with us to really think about the ways in which we can support better and more access to childcare in the city of Lancaster. And we're really appreciative to the School District of Lancaster for being willing to partner with us in this way. There are staff that are going to be supporting this effort within the district, as well as the Lancaster Rec Commission, Boys and Girls Club, the Mix, all of the usual partners, youth-serving partners in the city, as well as those that have a lot of summer programming, including the Science Factory and others. So I just named those as examples of organizations that we'll be partnering with. So if there can be a motion to table Administration Bill number 75 until we get the last couple of revisions back from the solicitor, it would be my hope then, Councilor Arroyo, to when that is finalized, and hopefully that's by the 13th, that there could be a motion to add this item to the agenda. I mean, do we have to do that, Bernie?
No, it's not on the agenda yet.
Yeah, so maybe it's just, we're just, hold it.
We have to choose a date, is that correct?
I'm sorry.
If we're motioning to table, we need to include a date, is that correct?
It's not required. It can be an indefinite, or it can be a motion to table to a specific time.
Terrific. Then I'll make it-
I'm sorry, just to clarify, Counselor Bakay, or do we even need that? And just to say that you will have the resolution, I'm sorry, the resolution before the next meeting, and so we should just proceed to move it, to have it on the agenda? I just clarifying procedure.
I think you can just proceed to have it on the, to move it onto the next agenda. That's what the votes are this evening, is just to put it on the agenda.
Yeah.
for-
Yeah, so I just was wanted to be mindful that you all haven't seen it yet, but you will see it before the 13th, and we expect to get those changes hopefully by the end of this week, Jess? Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Mayor Sorachi. So I'll hear a motion to add this to the agenda for the September 13th full council meeting.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great, thank you. That concludes the Economic Development Committee. Council President?
Thank you very much. That concludes our agenda for the evening. Mr. Harris, I believe we received the clerk's report electronically. Are you comfortable with foregoing it this evening?
It has been submitted in writing.
Thank you, sir. With that, I'll hear a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Have a good evening.
Hey. Welcome back.